Hey guys, before we get to the summer 2020 episode of the Carla and Crappy Show, I want to take a moment to address the June 24th Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. This decision, as you may know, stripped away the legal right to have a safe and legal abortion. Restricting access to comprehensive reproductive care, including abortion, threatens the health and independence of all Americans. This decision could also lead to the loss of other rights down the road. To learn more about what you can do to help, go to podvoices.help. And Carla, AJ, and I encourage you to speak up, take care, and spread the word. Thanks. Howdy, boys and girls. Welcome to the summer of 2022, and welcome to what is now the annual tradition of the Summertime Carla and Crappy Show. I am, of course, joined by Carla.
Hi, hello.
Carla. We are, of course, joined by AJ. Hi, AJ.
Hi, everybody.
We're going to start with story time. Earlier this summer, or I guess it technically was the spring, all the three of us got to hang out with families and kids and babies, not cats. We left them at home, but we got together at a Mexican restaurant in Pittsburgh and had a big sloppy dinner. And it was a ton of fun. I'm going to probably post a couple pictures from that in the over the video here, and we'll put some up on Facebook too, so you can see me holding Ellie, who is absolutely adorable.
She wasn't tonight, but that's fine.
I mean, my sample size is much smaller, but as far as I'm concerned, she is an angel from heaven, and it was a pleasure to meet her.
And my kids were there too.
They were awesome, and they had a great time making fun, making faces at Hannah as she kind of peeked around her dad. That's always a fun activity.
That was very fun.
As we were talking, we just kind of left it as sort of, well, we should do a summer show, but we're not sure what about. There's stuff going on, but certainly if something happens, we should do one. And then, Carla, something happened.
Something happened. So it's something, the understatement of the century here.
Something happened.
Yeah. In case you've been living under a rock, and hadn't heard, USC and UCLA, soon to be members of the Big Ten, as of 2024, and it all happened in the matter of one day. At least publicly, the public side of things, it happened in one day.
Yeah.
The announcement was in the morning, and by the end of the day, it was a done deal. That's a pretty big deal because USC and UCLA were some of the founding members of that conference, which obviously wasn't called the Pac-12 all those years, but they've been in those conferences since, the early 1900s. Yep. So this is a monumental shift in a lot of different things. And so when I posted, when we were texting each other and said, immediately we got to do a show on this. I tweeted that the three of us had some thoughts. We have so many thoughts that we actually started a Google Doc for them.
Well, it was very funny because we're sitting here going like, well, what about this? What about this? We should ask that. We should talk about that. And then it was like, okay, otherwise we're going to be scrolling through a text message chain for an hour and a half. And we don't want to listen. It's the summertime and we want to be conscious of people's time. Hopefully you're going to some sort of vacation and thinking about this sort of stuff. Or maybe you're just enjoying yourselves in your backyards. That's fine too. Mm-hmm. Your neighbor likes what you've done with the flowers.
Okay.
So, we wanted to organize this up just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I mean, it is a ton of stuff to wade through. Just trying to figure out how I feel about it as the Big Ten fan who remembers Rose Bowls in the first half of the 70s. My inclination, of course, is to look at this as a fan first, but we're going to be realistic here for a moment. AJ, you dug pretty deeply into past the basic answer to the why question. The why question is television and money and contracts, but take us through real quick what you found about like where the Big Ten contract stands, and what this might mean, because it's ridiculous the amount of money we're talking.
So here's kind of what happens. The very quick background on the way that the college TV deals work is we have to go back to the 1980s when the NCAA was sued, taken to the Supreme Court, a place they never like to go because they lose every time. Nothing but L's for the NCAA inside the Supreme Court. And they lost the rights to maintain the TV contract for all college sports. And they gave the ability for the conferences to start negotiating their own TV deals. And this is where realignment really starts. We've been having teams move between conferences and make shifts over and over again since the 80s. And what's happening is we have like a little bit of a perfect storm brewing. And if I go back to last offseason when Texas and Oklahoma made their huge announcement that they were leaving to go to the SEC, all of that was based on TV money. And specifically, everybody said, why are they announcing this in 2021 when they're not leaving until 2024, 2025? That's because that's when the Big 12's TV contract is up. And if for whatever reason they decide to leave before that TV right or before that grant of rights deal, that's what the official name of it is, before that deal is up, they owe the rest of their TV money along with any TV money they would be getting from the SEC during the duration of that grant of rights, which means that each school would be in the realm of like $100+ million in the hole to the Big 12 if they want to leave early. Texas and Oklahoma are rich. They're not $100 million throwaway rich. And so they are stuck effectively in the Big 12, which is leading to things like Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, and BYU all coming in and will be in the conference for a year while Texas and Oklahoma are still there. I'm very excited for
That's
this.
going to be fun. Oh man, that's going to be fun.
Listen, hey, if the Big 12 schedulers, if you're listening to me, hey, new Big 12 commissioner, if you're listening to me, please, for the love of God, make Texas go play Houston at Houston. Please do this for me. There is a huge, that is a petty ass argument, and I want it. Anyways, so what happens is Texas and Oklahoma go to the SEC. Why? Because the SEC is getting $40 million per school starting in 2024 and going to 2034. Now, where is all this money coming from? It's coming from ESPN. ESPN
exclusively, correct?
Exclusively. So remember the the SEC on CBS. Gone.
Sorry.
It is absolutely gone. ESPN bought that time slot from the SEC. So Uncle Vern, gone. All of that is no longer, and CBS is kind of on the sidelines at this point. So SEC is getting $40 million a school. The Big Ten currently is handing out $31.4 million per school, and their deal is up next year.
But wait, kids.
Fox, the other major player in the college sports broadcasting world, that Fox Sports, sure. Fox Sports 1, they own 60% of the Big Ten network. And not only that, they're sitting in all of the negotiations with ESPN, with CBS, with everybody, because they're part of the overall grant of rights deal.
Which is just mind-boggling to think
which
of.
Is just mind-boggling.
I'm not a fan of the Murdochs or the family or whoever owns whatever arm of Fox is, but that's genius. I can't argue.
The Pac-12, their deal is up next summer. Mm-hmm. And this is where we all get to see exactly where the Pac-12 was shot in the chest. It's not USC and UCLA leaving. It starts back in 2014 when the Pac-12 said, you know what? We're going to own our own conference network. We're not partnering with anybody. We own our entire media rights, and we sell off some games to ESPN and some games to Fox, but we own all of our media rights. And this is going to be a massive windfall once everything settles out. it turns out that if you're going to start your own network, you need to get your network onto places where people can see it. We've been making the joke about how this game's on the Pac-12 network, which means no one will see it. We've been making that joke because it's real. And they never really got carriage on DirecTV. DirecTV generally sets the channel rate. So when you pay for a channel on Comcast, Spectrum, whatever, the rate that Comcast and Spectrum were paying was generally set by DirecTV. DirecTV never set the rate, so they had to negotiate all these things out, and it led to a huge mess. The Pac-12 only pays $21 million per school.
Oh,
which is a bit of a problem when you're USC and UCLA. And I'm just going to pick on UCLA here because they're a public school, so their finances are public. UCLA is $100 million in the hole over the last 3 years. They're broke. And USC, from what many sources out there are saying, is in the exact same boat. So you have schools who are broke looking at a conference who is about to get paid somewhere in the range of multiple billions over the next decade. And they're saying, we would like some of that money too. So we would like to join this conference. However, who's actually pulling the strings is Fox and ESPN. ESPN is the reason Texas and Oklahoma are in the SEC. Fox is the reason the USC and UCLA are in there. Why? Because they want content. And what helps? Having teams in every single time zone. They're in the Pacific, Central, and Eastern time zone. They can cover the entire slate, which means Fox can do exactly what ESPN does, and they want to be number 2. And if we go back to October 24th, 2011, when LSU Chancellor Michael Martin was interviewed, someone said, hey, what do you see the future of college sports? He said, I think we could ultimately end up with 2 conferences, one called ESPN, one called Fox. And he was laughed at. Well, here we are.
It's better than Leaders and Legends.
Right. So
barely.
Just as a thought here, though, the ACC is only handing out $17 million per school, and they are locked in a 20-year deal that ends in 2036. The ACC has shackled themselves to ESPN. Notre Dame gets $15 million a year, and that ends in 2025.
Yeah.
So this is all about money. This is all about TV contracts. This is not about the conferences saying we want to be leaders in the field and what can we do to provide the best sports on the field. Nope. This is about content. This is about advertising money. And this is about the last bastion of what puts advertising dollars into the pockets of networks. It is live sports and live events. You can DVR everything. You can binge watch everything else. Live sports is still king on television. And that's what this is all about. And this is why this happened.
That's true. And you mentioned networks. I just really quickly, it may not stop with networks, right? Apple apparently had been interested in the Big Ten and then wasn't. And then suddenly with this announcement, maybe Apple's interested in the Big Ten again. So where does streaming fall into this?
So streaming is still, while very cool and hip and with it, streaming is still kind of a problem because you are still dealing with people who want to be able to point to the TV and say channel 32 is ESPN and that's what my boy's playing on TV. Mm-hmm. Right? No one wants to say I have Apple TV. I have to have Apple TV Plus to see 3 games that my kid is playing in. This is a big deal for recruiting. They want to be able to say that's the channel to watch. Mm-hmm. And so streaming is still a big problem. And if you would like to see a preview of what this turns into, please go look at Major League Baseball, who has Apple TV. Peacock has, I think, Saturday noon games or something like that. Apple has Friday night games. Mm-hmm. ESPN has Sunday night baseball. They were going to start putting things on ESPN Plus. You have the streaming services are a mess. They are not lined up in any real form. Plus, if you're looking at things like, I want to watch every game that my team plays in, and you're, say, a Yankees fan or a Red Sox fan or even a Pirates fan, you have, my team is on Apple TV Plus, they're on Peacock, they're on Fox, maybe. They might be on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. I definitely have to have the regional sports network. Hockey's the same way with ESPN Plus and the local broadcasts. This is what is turning into a problem. All the things that streaming was supposed to fix, right? I can just have the service that has all the games for this such and such sport. that doesn't work in a streaming world, because all the streaming places are completely happy to have one game or two games here or there versus I have the full slate.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're wondering why we can't just have what the NFL has, which is something like Sunday Ticket, where I pay one service and I get all of the games no matter where they are, that's going back to the fact that all of the conferences individually have their own TV deals, which means they can all have their own individual streaming deals. So don't be surprised if the SEC shows up on Apple TV at some point.
Yeah.
See also CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, or Tim Apple, as some would refer to him.
Yeah,
he is an Auburn grad and a not shy promoter of Auburn as well. He's been in multiple ads about that.
You brought that up. That's interesting.
So, and Eddie Q, who is in charge of all their services, especially Apple TV Plus, went to Duke, huge sports fan, has courtside seats for the Warriors. He is pushing for live sports.
Okay. Carla, would you go out of your way? Like if there were, last season, there was one, there was one Notre Dame game that was on Peacock exclusively. Would you go out of your way to sign up to a service for a situation like that, where, you know, a Penn State game or two or something is only available on a streaming platform, at least to you?
I think it depends on the level of fandom. Okay. Really. You know, if it's your team, I think that's different. And how involved you are with, as opposed to like the whole conference, right? Mm-hmm. So like even though I'm a huge Big Ten fan, if it's an Iowa-Nebraska game that's happening on a streaming service, like, no,
you gotta watch that.
First of all, how dare you slander the $5 bits and share trophy game? Number one, and saying that goes on a streaming service.
So anyway,
I mean, for reference, like, I know this is going to come across as being like blasphemous, but like, we don't have ESPN Plus yet.
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
Here at the, you know, and there are definitely, you know, I missed it during Penn's season. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many hockey games on ESPN Plus, and I am still a pure hockey fan because I never covered it, so I'm actually still a fan. Sure. And I missed a bunch of games because we didn't have ESPN Plus, and we're actually talking about like the streaming services that we do have. Would we shift and add ESPN Plus? You know, just even for hockey season, we add the sports entertainment pack to our streaming service, mm-hmm. Just during football season.
Okay.
So yes, so I have paid for an add-on that we add on for 4 months, and then we cancel it as soon as that's over. So I guess it really kind of depends if that becomes the culture, and it'll be really interesting because the NFL is going to force us into it this year, with the Thursday night game being exclusively on Amazon Prime. Right. It'll be really interesting to see how that translates on a broader scale, or whether you get the same kind of what AJ was talking about, people complaining about the fact they can't see the game on channel 53. It'll be really interesting to see. Now, again, NFL and NCAA football, slightly different beasts here, but I think I think it'll be an interesting test case.
I mean, like, let's call this out. Amazon didn't play games when they said we want the Thursday game, because the first 6 weeks of the season, week 2 is Chargers at Chiefs. Yep. Week 3 is Steelers at Browns. Week 4 is Miami at Cincinnati. Thursday is Indianapolis at Denver. They are putting stars. And like, this isn't Jags. This isn't like Jags Texans.
Right.
This is like, we are putting marquee games and marquee teams onto Thursday night to generate viewers to this platform. Yep. And so this is something you'll see going forward. I've seen a number of things pop up, like the ACC. What was the thing I literally just saw it. I saw a joke about tactical visors. You'll get it here in a second. Where did it go? There was the ACC. The Pac-12 and ACC are discussing a broadcast partnership that would have the ACC network or a new ESPN network air Pac-12 games on the West Coast. This is the sort of like Wild West we're in right now. Like, okay, can we take advantage of this? Can we use this to generate more space here? Again, this all comes back to money and where things fit in. NBC and CBS are also sitting there. They're on the sidelines waiting. they could very much slide in for an ACC deal, a CBS deal, or for an ACC deal, a Big 12 deal.
Yep.
All of those are still there, and somebody like CBS can potentially have a war chest along with Paramount Plus and NBC has
Right.
Peacock.
Peacock.
And like, these are the sorts of things that all of these services start to offer that turns this into much more of a business. I know that we like to joke about, here's how the sport is going, and it's really fun to watch, Jake Haener throw for 400 yards on half a leg for Fresno State, but this is what makes the game work. And in my opinion, this is also what makes college football kind of fun, because it's not like the NFL where there's like one TV deal and they've just like worked that stuff out for the next 25 years and no one cares. It's like, oh, right. This is like, they will literally move teams between conferences because they think it's fun to make the TV money go up.
Well, and here's the other interesting, to kind of piggyback off of that a little bit, it'll kind of, I think, transition us a little bit into where we're heading with this conversation, is that part of the problem with this is that essentially the conferences are competing against each other, right, for these media deals, because there's only so much content that a network can handle. And so what has happened in all of this is the fact that, okay, ESPN has signed SEC, locked them in, and SEC is their cash cow. They've also signed a secondary deal with the ACC, locked them in for way too many years for way too little money, and now they're stuck, right? Because to ESPN, the ACC plays second fiddle to the SEC. Who's left out in all of this? The Big 12. The Big 12 is currently signed with ESPN, and ESPN has flat out said they're not interested in renewing that contract because they got what they wanted. They've got enough content. They can feed their audiences. And so now the Big 12 is going, okay.
They're calling Uncle Vern.
Yeah. Listen, and the thing about the Big 12 is that the Big 12 went from Texas and Oklahoma are leaving, y'all are dead, RIP, you got Houston and Cincinnati, that's cute, to might be adding Arizona State, Utah, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, and creating a 20-team conference. Sure. Awesome.
I immediately wrote off the Big 12 as dead at this point last year.
Yeah, everybody did.
And was clearly wrong. They have handled it well. And that is one of the two rumors that are going around just like today about what might happen with Pac-12 remnants. Do they team up with the ACC? Does the Big 12 absorb a whole bunch of those guys from the old Pac-12? It's fun. And we were actually wondering if we would have to figure out how to change the show really quickly and our outline if something happened today, but we got at least a 1-day break.
But the show might be outdated by the time you're listening to it. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's happened before. So not a big deal.
Hey, stay tuned. But at the end of the show, the three of us are just going to start saying random things that have happened, and we'll see who was right. We'll just predict the future and just say, oh man, wasn't it wild that Oregon joined the ACC? Like, we could do anything we want to. Anything is possible. USC and UCLA are in the Big Ten now. Like, sure, awesome.
We're going to do that right now.
Okay,
I think as we're lining up, new conference members in preparation for TV rights negotiations and all the fun that goes with it. I think it's logical to assume that we're not done with expansion. Do I agree? Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. I want to do this exercise with both the Big Ten and the SEC because I feel like I don't want to say consequential moves, but that may be with the Big 12 in here, obviously as well. The Big 12. We just kind of went over how they would get to 20. I want to see how the three of us would get the Big 10 to 20 and how we would get the SEC to 20. Couple questions just about, just real quickly, your thoughts about expansion and how this works. Clearly, I need to let go of my notion of the traditional Big 10 footprint in the Midwest and just embrace this new TV coast to coast thing, right?
Airplane conference, baby. This
Airplane
ain't
conference.
new. This is not new. In fact, this goes back to 1959. Shout out to Matt Brown of the Extra Points newsletter, who wrote a wonderful book called What If. It was my first Amazon purchase in the last 2 years.
Nice.
But this goes back to 1959. It was the brainchild of then University of Pittsburgh athletic director Tom Hamilton, who attempted to do what the Big Ten just did and build a conference that stretched coast to coast. It would have had 5 teams from the then Pacific Coast Conference, as Carla mentioned, USC and UCLA, some of the founding members there, but also Washington, Cal, and Stanford. It would have had 4 Eastern universities, Notre Dame, Pitt, Penn State, and Syracuse. And it would have had the 3 service academies, Army, Navy, and the Air Force. Now, this, I think, is a perfectly balanced conference, because Army is based on the East Coast, Navy is based on the East Coast. So you'd effectively have 6 teams on the East Coast, and then you'd have these 6 Western teams: Washington, Cal, USC, UCLA, Stanford, and Air Force based in Colorado Springs. You would have effectively a coast-to-coast conference that could have effectively localized divisions. So the only travel would be some cross-country travel to play cross-division. This did not happen because the Pentagon stepped in and said no. Literally the Pentagon, some 4-star general had to go, I'm sorry, you want the Army to do what? No. And then they moved on.
A very large building filled with people not known for their sense of humor.
No, absolutely no humor in the building.
Or just the ability to enjoy things.
Why have fun?
Not so much. Yeah, don't do that.
So the airplane conference effectively is what the Big Ten built.
Mm-hmm.
And they could, in my opinion, I think they're not done expanding. I think they are likely to add additional West Coast teams. I think they have to add additional West Coast teams. Otherwise, UCLA and USC and UCLA are on an island. Shout out to my beloved Rainbow Warriors, who have to do this all the time, and no one complains.
Yeah, that's a good point.
UCLA
it is.
and USC would be effectively on their own little travel island with each other. Having additional teams on the West Coast, having some teams maybe a little bit closer to them in the Midwest or even in the Mountain Time Zone would be really, really helpful. But I think the Big Ten could easily get to 20 teams if you would like to know my list. Right. So they've already
let me ask you this one question before we actually get to the names here, because it's been a thing that has been driving it's been like outside of TV markets is probably the second most important thing, apparently, from what the conference has done as we go through this process, and that is membership in the Association of American Universities. We have talked about this before. Every Big Ten school except for Nebraska is a member. Southern Cal, UCLA, also both members, and obviously there are Pac-12 schools out there that are members. Is that an important thing for the Big Ten to continue to pursue, or is that a limitation that the conference should be careful of right now? What do you think, Carla?
Ooh, I was gonna say, ask your resident academic.
Look at that.
So I have thoughts on this, and part of this is because of things that I have experienced at the university where I for those of you that might not have listened to us ever before, hi, I teach at Middle Tennessee State University, and one of the things that I have learned over the past couple of years is the fact that research standing is like super important when it comes to funding and salary and grant money, right? So as an institution, MTSU actually just raised their research level. We went from an R3 institution to an R2 institution, which turns out to be a pretty big deal. And as someone who's kind of coming into the world of academia as a second career, right? Didn't realize how big of a deal that was and how much it is actually shifting the way that I have to teach. And different things that I have to emphasize on research skills and getting things approved through IRB, the Institutional Review Board, and all those kinds of things, right? So the fact that the Big Ten for this amount of time has been able to stay with institutions that are AAU is a big deal. It means absolutely nothing in the athletic arena.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
It really just depends on whether or not these schools find that the academic side
Mhm.
to be as much a part of their branding and their draw and their recruit and their appeal, right?
Mhm. Okay.
So to me, as the Big Ten, as someone who's been a Big Ten fan and who now is better understanding what AAU means, having lost the regional footprint, because I'm like you, right? I like the fact that the Big Ten had a regional footprint. And that was my first reaction when I heard USC and UCLA. I was at first like, what are we doing? And then the second thought was like, wait, no, this actually makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think the AAU thing is going to continue to be a thing.
Okay.
So to me, I think they should continue to pursue that. There's some other side things there that I'll get into when I start talking about my teams, but I'll stop there for now.
Okay. AJ, do you have a thought either way? I mean, is that something the Big Ten should continue to do, or they're just getting in their own way?
I think part of it gets in their own way from an athletic standpoint.
Okay.
Right now, does the question becomes, I don't know this because I'm not in academia and this is, not my forte.
Right. But
do the AAU members regularly get together, and would they get together based on what it really is, the athletic side of the house and those affiliations? Because I know that they do talk about, the SEC likes to talk about like, we are all together as the SEC. And it's like, you're an athletic conference, not necessarily a thing there. By the way, Crappy, Texas A&M is an AAU school.
Yes, they are.
And new SEC member Texas is also an AAU school. So the SEC is also pulling up their bona fides. If the Big Ten would like to add an AAU school with a football program that has been fairly recently successful, the University of Buffalo is available.
They would be too annoying in the Big Ten. They sure would be. Man, I don't want any part of that.
So all of this is to say, I think that they can continue to do AAU schools. And in fact, my list, I had one school on my list to get the Big 10 to Big 20. That was not an AAU school. And it will be a very fun name when I say it.
Oh, sweet. Right.
But in this, it's not necessary. I think it would be getting in their own way.
Okay.
I don't think that they necessarily have to force it. I do think that it is something that the Big Ten fan base and the conference does pride itself on, that we do care deeply about academics and academia and the studies of man. But as long as Fox is the one really pulling the strings back here, Fox is just handing them, like when they handed them UCLA and USC, like they instantly walked past the bona fides because they were already AAU schools. They're already R1 schools. So they know they can just walk them right in. The Big Ten goes, okay, good. These are good schools that also happen to have good football brands that we would like to have. By the way, this also, because this isn't just like conference affiliation for football. This means UCLA basketball is now Big Ten basketball is a thing.
Yes, it is.
So all of those pieces go along with that.
And that's every time I think about this question, and we might have even talked about this on the show at some point last season, I come across Kansas.
Yep.
And which is an AAU school and I'm like, okay, obviously Kansas football, but man, what that does for the Big Ten as a basketball conference.
You guys act like you forgot. You guys forgot you added Rutgers.
I know.
Y'all act like you forgot.
But Rutgers has been better.
Annoying.
Yeah.
Occasionally annoying.
I would count them as occasionally annoying.
Yeah, they've been annoying when Greg Schiano was their head coach. That was it.
Yeah.
Kyle Flood had one good year. It's fine.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to start this. And the basic assumption is we are expanding both conferences from 16, which that number includes the teams that they have added that aren't playing in the conference yet, to get up to 20. And certainly we are aware that 20 might not be the end of this process. So I am going with Stanford, and Stanford's kind of my holy grail for this. A good football program, a step or two away from being a great football program, unparalleled academics, and an unparalleled athletic program. I mean, and good word, almost everything. Oregon. I don't know that the student body or the alumni base at Oregon is super concerned with being an AAU school, but they are. And again, that gives SC and UCLA, some partners on the West Coast. It gives the Big Ten, keeps the Big Ten in line with its academic preferences, and adds two schools with very good athletic programs. This is a fun one, and I did this not because I think really it's going to happen, but it just makes more sense than what's going on in reality. Missouri, I still, it's just dumb that they're in the SEC, and I will always think it's dumb that they're in the SEC. So Missouri, go. They'd be just as do just as well as Big 12. But either way, just get out of the SEC. That doesn't make any sense. And then this one, for completely selfish reasons, Pitt. There are many schools that would be better choice than Pitt, like UNC or UVA or Colorado. But if I could go see Ohio State road games 10 minutes from my house, I'm all in on that. The only other disclaimer I have to offer, I would kick off Oregon, Missouri, Pitt, UC, UVA, or UNC at once. Stanford would be the only one that I would not, if that school in South Bend wanted to talk. And that's my list. Carla, what four are you grabbing to get the Big 10 to 20?
So I love that you said Mizzou.
Okay.
Because I came up with a couple of different scenarios here, depending on whether or not the 6 teams that have been rumored to be joining the Big 12, whether or not that happens, right? So let's assume right now that doesn't happen.
Okay.
And I've already I've thought through the idea of let's keep getting West Coast teams, right?
Okay.
Same kind of logic. So let's pilfer out of the Pac-12. I love Stanford. I think they would be a great addition. I think Cal would be a good addition. And then I also like Oregon and Washington. That keeps some of those rivalries together. So essentially you would be creating, a pretty nice division up and down the West Coast. Another option that I was thinking through was, okay, same thing that you saw about Kansas. And the idea that Kansas is the only AAU school left in the Big 12 after Texas leaves. And so Kansas would be a natural fit in the Big 10. And so maybe you punt Cal and put Kansas in its place, thinking primarily basketball and some of the other non-revenue gen sports. Here's a curveball.
Okay.
If, and this is a big if the 6 teams that are rumored to go to the Big 12 actually go to the Big 12, that still leaves Stanford on the table. Stanford is not a part of that conversation.
I noticed that, and that's really interesting to me. And I didn't have a chance to track down what that was about.
Yeah, I didn't dig into that deeply enough to figure out.
That's a very simple one.
Okay.
This goes back to Cal and Stanford, but Cal in particular. When there was the big push, the last time there was big realignment and the Big 12 was looking to add a bunch of Pac-12 schools. This is, by the way, folks, if you're new here, this is not the first time this has happened. The last time this happened, Cal and Stanford said, absolutely not. We will not join a conference with Baylor and TCU. They do not want to be part of private religious school conferences. BYU would be another one. They do not want to be a part of that. They really, really hate that. And so they backed out.
Hippies.
So, and then the Pac-12 decided they were going, this is when the Pac-12 was trying to pull in Big 12 schools. Right. And the Pac-12 tried to negotiate with DeLoss Dodds, who was the AD at Texas. DeLoss Dodds pulled a ropey dope on him and said, yeah, sure, that sounds cool. Took the deal to ESPN and said, give me my own TV network and I'll stay in the Big 12. And ESPN said, all right, cool. Here's the Longhorn Network.
Yep.
That is exactly how this all happened.
Exactly how it went down too, because I was in the Rivals newsroom when the day that happened, when Orange Bloods broke the story, and I was managing their media appearances. Because we were getting phone calls off the hook. And so we were booking media appearances for the guys from Orange Bloods. And that's exactly how it went down. 100%
Nice.
the way that went
Nice.
down.
Your
So anyhow,
curveball. Your curveball.
So my curveball. Stanford, Kansas. And then you go pilfer from the ACC and you go get Duke and Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, the Big Ten has always been a basketball conference.
Yep.
So that's true. Everybody knows this. I'm not opposed to this idea. The problem is that you've pulled away the third wheel in the Carolinas.
NC State.
You left NC State behind, and they will not be pleased with this news in the slightest.
But
They're
NC
already
State,
mad about ACC scheduling.
But I think NC State is also an AAU school. I think NC State is on the AAU list, if I remember correctly. No, they're not. Okay.
No, NC State is not on there.
Interestingly enough, Notre Dame is not on the AAU
no,
list.
it is not. It's not.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, thanks. You took my curveball because I was like, yeah, here's my list. They're all AAU schools except Notre Dame.
Yeah.
AJ, what's your list?
So my list is, you guys already named them all. It's Cal, Stanford, Notre Dame, and Pitt. And the reason for that is that Cal and Stanford are paired together at the hip forever. They will always be paired at the hip forever. That's a good point. In my opinion, if you take Stanford, you have to take Cal. Notre Dame should have been in the Big Ten forever ago.
Yeah, yes.
Thanks, Catholics, I guess. I think the story of why Notre Dame is not in the Big Ten or the predecessor to the Big Ten has to do with a anti-Catholic slant somewhere along the line. And then Pitt belongs there because I just want to see Pitt Penn State every single year. I just want that.
I do too.
And
agreed.
And I would be happy to see that forever. Now, what I've done is I've made a power 3 where I have made 3 20-team conferences.
Yes.
So if I take the Big 12, so we've got Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, WVU, and then the new 4, BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, right? That is the current Big 12, the actual 12 of the Big 12. I'm adding Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, Wazoo, and Oregon State. I have kept every in-state rivalry. I have maintained a Western division because BYU can sit out there with them. Colorado's out there too. So I can effectively maintain a somewhat Western conference there. With the Big Ten, I've already mentioned my 4. And then for the SEC, because they're at 16 as well, I'm adding Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and Virginia Tech. And I have just made the SEC an absolute monster of a football conference. Basketball, it's Kentucky. Yes. But apparently, I take that back. Georgia and Alabama were very good this year too. Auburn was like number 1 in the country for a while. So the SEC can also be a basketball school. I really regret to inform you, ACC, that y'all are dead. I've left Tobacco Road intact because my beautiful friends in the Carolinas, I cannot bear to see them unhappy and not be able to just get pithy about the fact that they all play each other 20 minutes away from each other.
Yes.
It is the most convenient rivalry set in all of college sports. So we got to keep that together.
Okay. I can throw an addition to that too, because I saw this conversation on Twitter. A hat tip to a friend of the show, Braden Gall, who had a conversation on Twitter regarding, couldn't the SEC punt Vandy and bring on Louisville, which is a really interesting conversation. So if you go back to Crappy's idea here of the Big Ten picking up Mizzou, which I like, Mizzou and Vandy to the Big Ten, that frees up 6 slots in the SEC, which means that you could do what AJ just said and bring on Duke and Carolina.
You were again leaving NC State, and they will be very, very upset about this. I cannot explain to you how little brother NC State is in that rivalry, and they will be forever mad.
And I like Raleigh better than both Chapel Hill and Durham.
No, I will listen. I hate Duke with a deep, deep passion, but I will ride for Durham. Durham is amazing. Durham is the gritty one of the 3. It's the best.
I know. I understand. So we've heard everybody. Carla, did you get you? Yes, you just gave us our your SEC teams.
Yes.
I need to do this.
Well, no, I didn't. I said that was an option. If I was the SEC, I would go after
an option, but perhaps not your option.
My option would be to go get Florida State, Miami, Clemson, and Louisville.
Okay.
because
Okay.
I think that's negotiable for the SEC because same media rights holders.
Okay.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
So
ESPN
for every
can,
ESPN can do whatever they
can
want.
ESPN can shuffle the deck chairs. They can do whatever they want to.
Yeah. So those are easy. That's low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Done.
Oh,
Okay.
by the way, a point that I did want to make about this whole Fox adding USC and UCLA.
Mhm.
The other thing is that Fox is desperately trying to make LA a sports town. Note that Fox does all of their broadcasting from
Yeah.
LA.
Yes.
All of their college sports, all of their pregame shows, whatever, all of that happens out of LA. They want LA to be a thing, and putting USC and UCLA, the two LA schools, into their big top tier college football franchise, the Big Ten. I know that pains everyone here to hear that that's their franchise, but it is. By putting them into that, they are able to put more eyeballs, because guess who wants to watch USC Ohio State? Everybody.
Me.
Guess who wants to watch UCLA Michigan?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Right? These are the sorts of things that they can put more eyeballs. And by the way, do you think LA doesn't have a bazillion Big Ten school alumni in it?
Right.
Yeah.
You'd be hard pressed to find otherwise. Like, this is, I actually mentioned this, shout out to our chief strategy officer at work, who is a huge Ohio State fan, has an Ohio State helmet in his office right behind him.
Very nice.
And I said, hey, this is completely unrelated to anything business wise. Are you going to go to the Rose Bowl when Ohio State plays UCLA? And he goes, yes. Why wouldn't I do that? I was like, are you going to go on the road trips to USC? He's like, yeah, you want to go? And I was like, yes. He's like, will you wear an Ohio State shirt? I was like, of course I will. And I won't even feel bad about it, because it's UCLA. They have 20,000 people in the stands. There's going to be 60,000 Ohio State fans who get a bonus Rose Bowl. Of course they're going to go.
A couple more things about expansion. My SEC, I have the three that everybody has: Miami, Florida State, and Clemson. Thinking exclusively pretty much of eyeballs and TV. My fourth is Georgia Tech. I mean, Miami and Florida State would lock up the state of Florida in terms of television, and like the entire state. Tech locks up Atlanta TV even more tightly than it is now with UGA. And, it has the best football program in the South that isn't already in the conference. And that's not NC State. Two questions for both of you, then we will move on.
Hey, NC State fans, I see you.
Yeah.
I recognize you, and I'm here for you. Okay.
What, Carla?
Yes.
What should happen with Notre Dame? What will happen with Notre Dame? And I'm thinking mostly short term.
I think Notre Dame's going to sit out their media deal right now. Start looking, because you have to believe that the ACC looks much less appealing now than it did strictly from the financial angle, right? And if they were going to join the Big Ten, I mean, obviously the payday is going to be much bigger than what they will probably be able to negotiate from NBC or whoever when their media rights deal is up. I think Notre Dame's going to sit on this for a year. It wouldn't stun me if we were doing this show again next summer, because that's about the time that Notre Dame's going to start negotiating their deal. Yeah. It wouldn't stun me again if we were doing another conference realignment show at this time in 2023 for Notre Dame joining the Big Ten. That's what I think they should do. Okay. Will they do that? It's a matter of putting aside some ego. But never say never, because Texas gave up the Longhorn Network.
True. AJ, same questions. What should happen with Notre Dame? What will happen with Notre Dame?
What should happen is I am in agreement. I think Notre Dame should be in the Big Ten. It makes all of the sense in the world, footprint-wise, culture-wise, history-wise, academia-wise, all of the things that that goes together. That's two tastes. That's two tastes that taste together. I'm not saying they're great. I'm just saying that they taste and they go together. However, what Notre Dame will do, because they're Notre Dame and they feel like they're special little boys, I can see them. I actually saw someone post this. It was you have to build a 12-game schedule, right? What if, because USC and let's say Stanford were to go to the Big Ten, They could build a 4-game Notre Dame versus the Big Ten.
Yeah.
They could build a 4-game Notre Dame versus the ACC, and then build a 4-game, do whatever the hell else you want to do. Play an academy, play a MAC school, play an SEC school, play a big payday game, whatever.
It's kind of what they do. It's kind of what they do already.
It's kind of what they do already, but actually formalize it as a 4-4-4
okay.
schedule.
Okay.
And this would piss off the most people, because people want to see Notre Dame just like not be special.
Mm-hmm.
And this would make them, again, the most special team in all of college football. And that's what they will do. Whether or not anybody lets them get away with it, completely different story.
Okay. Should obviously join the Big Ten. For all the reasons that both you guys have mentioned. It makes too much sense for it not to happen. And I still kind of think it's going to happen eventually. But it for right now, what will Notre Dame do? That is nothing. As you know, they've got a new TV deal coming up, so that they have a little freedom there. Pat Forty wrote a column, I think yesterday or today, makes a good point about the college football playoff expiring, I think, after the 26th season. What happens with that? Because right now, the discussions to expand the playoff seem to have died. So what is there going to be a playoff after that season? And then, gotta wait and see what happens with the ACC. Does the ACC even continue to exist in the next year or two? Those are both things that 40 pointed out that I agree with, that Notre Dame will consider. For right now, nothing. They are going to continue to be Notre Dame, and I will see them in Columbus on the first weekend in September. We focus a lot on the Big Ten to this point because that's who we are as a podcast, and also on the SEC, because they tend to take up the second most much amount of our time. It's not as simple as plucking our preferred additions out of their current homes, like we just did with the previous exercise. There are problems with the ACC in particular. Yanking them out of a conference before the media deal is up sometime in the next generation or two, whenever that was. That's going to be an expensive proposition for somebody. AJ, explain how that's going to go. They're at a ridiculous buyout number right now, right?
Yeah. So basically, what ends up happening is most of these contracts have you owe us the remainder of the contract if you want to leave early. The funny part here is that even though they've got this 20-year contract, the contract number is not that high. So right now the figure is believed to be north of $100 million for a school to leave if they wanted to leave right now. Mm-hmm. But as time goes on, if that number gets down to, let's say, 80 million, and the SEC calls up Dabo and says, "Hey, Dabo, y'all want to come down and play in the swamp?" or whatever they would say for the SEC. That's 2 years of SEC money.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that they couldn't say, "Hey, we're going to bring in Clemson. Clemson's going to not have any TV money for these 2 years, but they're going to have 40 million coming out of it after that." Mm-hmm. Or they work out some payment schedule with the ACC where the ACC gets a third or a quarter or half of that money, but Clemson's still pocketing more money than they would be getting from the ACC. Mm-hmm. This is the same thing that kind of goes into, just to kind of transition this a little bit, when we think about USC and UCLA being broke, right? They're looking at this and saying, okay, let's say the Big Ten pays us they match the SEC and it's 40 million a year. That is double what we're getting from the Pac-12. Do I sit here and say it's not going to be hard to travel? Absolutely not. There's going to, and the pain is not the football team. The pain is on the basketball team. The pain is on the non-revenue sports like softball and volleyball and baseball and soccer, who play more than once a week, right? The football team only plays once a week. So
they only for a relatively short period of time.
For a relatively short period of time. Yeah. So if UCLA goes and plays at Ohio State or at Penn State, that's not that big of a deal travel wise. Because the next week they could just say, hey, if they have an away game, they have to have a home game the next week. They can't have back-to-back away games. Done.
Yeah.
But in soccer, where they play 4 or 5 games, you might have a situation where like USC and UCLA are just playing like, this is like when the Penguins play their like stupid West Coast road trip.
Right.
At the beginning of the year, they play like Edmonton and Winnipeg and Vancouver and Calgary and Seattle and the Sharks before coming back, because traveling to the other side of the country and back over and over again doesn't work. This might be the way that works, but that takes a huge toll on those athletes. But they can look at it and say, like, from a financial standpoint, they can say, yeah, this is going to cost us more in travel, but we're making 20 extra million a year. If it costs us $2 million in travel, we still have $18 million. And Carla, this is kind of where you were, kind of saying like, hey, what does this do? How does this work?
Well, you found an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education a day or two ago.
Yeah.
That talked about this issue pretty specifically. Give us the gist of what that story said.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and things that get lost in the shuffle of all this, right? The non-revenue gen sports. And what I found really interesting in that particular article was the idea of what we were just talking about with the Big Ten and the AAU, right? And that these are highly academic institutions, and that's part of the selling point of all of this, is that you can go to a really strong academic school and continue your athletic career. What happens now with all this extra travel? Students miss classes. Are they going to be able to pursue that degree that they wanted and continue to play their sport, because they're going to miss too many classes, miss too many lab sessions, right? And even if they are able to figure out a way to make that happen, what's going to be sacrificed in all of this? Sleep. Right. And that brings into a huge conversation that's happening right now, particularly in the academic community. We're having it at MTSU with mental health in students. Right. And the one thing that really plays a huge factor in the mental health of students and student athletes in particular is the amount of sleep they are able to get. And so by doing this, we're causing ripple effects well beyond the athletic community. And it might force a student athlete entering freshman year to say, hey, I have the opportunity to go play at a Big Ten school. If they have the same offer on the table from a Big Ten school and an ACC school, does it make, on the academic side, a little bit more appealing to go to the ACC school because I can actually go to class and I can actually get the degree? I mean, the NCAA did that whole advertising thing, right? About how student athletes don't go on to play professionally. They go on to do other things.
They're going to go pro in something other than sports.
They're going to go pro in something other than sports, right? We've now given a really tough decision potentially to students that might have the potential to go play in the Big Ten and might turn that down in pursuit of academics, right? Things that you don't necessarily think about when you're thinking about Fox pulling the strings on a TV deal.
Right.
And that's the sort of thing that came up when WVU went to the Big 12. And I've yet to hear anybody who's a WVU fan or anybody close to the WVU program say, oh yeah, it's super easy and no one's ever mad about it. They're constantly mad, like, oh, the soccer team has to go to Laredo or has to go to Lubbock. You go to the moon. It's the same thing, right? There's that amount of travel is a lot, especially to those schools. Now, USC and UCLA have 5 airports. Team flies into the airport. They take a bus from the airport to hotel, which is near the school, so on and so forth. They can make that work. Same with Cal, same with Stanford, same with Oregon, same with UCLA, or same with Washington. But when you start to consider in all of these travel schedules, you're right. It does take away from the actual student experience. And these are still students who are still in college, who have to keep up their classes, because if they don't, they are academically ineligible to participate. Like, this is a big deal, right? This is, we still, as much as we, like to joke about how there's a lot of money here and NIL and the players should be paid, which they should, these are still college students who are still trying to get degrees, who at the end of this, there is no insurance, there's no retirement there's no 401k for football. Right.
Yep.
You have this time period in which you can do this. Do you really want to spend your time as a lineman on a plane going back and forth across the country? Do you really want to do that? And that might lead to interesting recruiting questions, which is why I think the Big Ten is not done expanding. And I think they want more West Coast or Mountain Time Zone teams that they can add in so that they can say that, look, we are not just like UCLA and USC were the first two. We have more in the tank, but we don't necessarily want to let that out of the bag now. But right now it looks really, really bad. Maybe that changes if they add somebody.
Okay. It's interesting things to think about. And again, fan crappy is like, woohoo, let's get them in the league and get them playing football games right now. And then you think about, how much time I'd spent watching like women's hockey this winter and the non-revenue sports. That's going to have a huge impact on all those programs, and maybe to the point there where it actually changes the course of them, as Carla referenced. We are getting down to an hour-ish, so we're going to go to the speed round, where I have a few questions just about how this has gone, how it will go, and then we'll have a final thought, and we will be done until whenever it is that we need to do another show, which might be next week. We don't have any idea. I want to start with the three other Power 5 conferences, such as they are right now, and get your quick opinion as to whether or not the conference is buying or selling. The Pac-12, AJ, are they buying or selling?
They would like to buy. They are selling.
They are selling. Carla?
Yeah, I think they're selling.
I would tend to agree. I was dead wrong about the Big 12 last summer, but I think the Pac-12 is selling around this time around. Speaking of the Big 12, AJ, buying or selling?
Absolutely buying.
Absolutely.
They are trying their hardest to maintain and not die. They saw everybody call them dead, and they said, "I'm not dead yet."
Yeah, they did. Carla, Big 12.
Big 12 is definitely buying, but I'm wondering if they have a little bit of buyer's remorse for jumping on the grenade too quickly last summer. Because everybody panicked when Texas and Oklahoma left, and had they just waited it out for one more year,
right,
it could have. I mean, a wholesale merger between what's left of the Pac-12 and what's left of the Big 12 would have been pretty appealing.
I think though they grabbed the teams that they grabbed. They grabbed Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU, 4 schools that they had planned on adding many moons ago. The first time that they were talking about adding schools, because they couldn't have they wanted a conference championship game. And it wasn't until they were allowed to have one without divisions that they kind of scurried away on that one. But I don't think that they were unopposed to adding those teams. And I think adding them, they've already added a playoff contender in Cincinnati.
Right.
Sure.
They have added BYU, a team who is regularly good. They added UCF, who just got a pair of 4-star linebackers. Gus is Cruton down there. And they added Houston, a school who has a bunch of money, who has consistently been a 9 to 10 win team in the AAC. I don't think they panicked. I think they got what they got. And I think that if they stood pat right now, they'd be fine. And if they add the Pac-12 schools, they're going to be great.
Did you hear AJ slip some actual football discussion in that comment? Did you notice that, Carla?
Sure did.
A little bit, yeah. And don't forget we put Holgo back in the Big 12, so there's always that.
Yes. The sugar-free Red Bull God himself is back, baby.
Yes. I'm with you guys. Big 12 is absolutely buying. I think primarily looking to the West at this point. That leaves us with spoiler alert, this is the conference that I think is in the worst shape of all, maybe, and that is the ACC. AJ, buying or selling?
Neither.
Okay.
I don't think they're doing anything. I think they're stuck. No one wants to join them for the TV money.
Nope.
No one wants to join them for the like quality of play, because it's Clemson and maybe Florida State gets it together. Miami seems to be putting everything in NIL. Pitt's losing a ton.
Not NC State.
NC State is a 9-win team every year. You know this. They have a ceiling. How dare you? But
they've taken the place of 9-4 Bo Pelini.
I'm sorry, Raleigh.
But they're not doing either. They're stuck. They can't buy because no one wants to join them, and they're not selling because everybody's locked up for the next 20 years. They are stasis.
Before I respond, Carla, the ACC is buying or selling?
I kind of agree. They're kind of stuck playing. They're stuck playing little brother, which is really funny because that was always Dabo's big argument, right? Was that Clemson's little brother in the SEC country, and now like legitimately they are.
Little Clemson just out here, just trying to make do with our 5-star quarterback.
Dabo was right. The thing that I wrote down is selling, eventually. Right now they don't have to do anything, but if any of these conferences are going to like vanish completely, for some reason I feel like it's the ACC, which is odd. They've been around for so long, but that's what I see. Carla, what should happen with the Big Ten title game?
Gosh, I know we had this conversation on the text thread about the idea of it moving to SoFi Stadium. Everything makes sense for it to go there. Should that happen? I don't know. Like the Big Ten heart in me is like, ugh, I hate that going all the way to LA, but everything else about it adds up and it makes total sense. Big Ten title game is going to be in Los Angeles somewhere.
AJ, same question.
I think it would be hilarious if the Big Ten title game ended up in LA. But here's the thing. Think about it. When is the Big Ten title game?
First week in December.
It's the first week in December.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that a bunch of people in the Midwest don't want to go to LA for a weekend at the first week of December. You can't tell me that.
I cannot tell you that.
You can't tell me that, like, if Wisconsin and Penn State were in the Big Ten title game, that a bunch of people were like, oh, we should go get a flight to LAX. And then they all bugger off to they bugger off to whatever airport to catch the connector to LAX. You can't tell me otherwise. Yeah, they're absolutely going to do that. I
still want to see the Big Ten title game in Soldier Field, but
100%.
That's never going to happen.
I could absolutely see them putting it on a rotation of like, Soldier Field.
That's the most likely thing if we're being serious. If we're not being serious and you want to have a game on the West Coast in December, how about Levi Stadium?
Big jeans. Let's go, Big Jeans.
I hear they have some experience with conference championship games. I just a thought.
Big Ten title game on a Friday night. Let's go.
At like 5 o'clock.
At 5 p.m.
What?
In middle of nowhere, California.
It's in the middle of San Jose. You put some respect on Big Jeans like that.
Hey, don't blame me that Dabo said that.
That's true.
Middle of nowhere, California.
He doesn't know where Clemson is.
Outside of the years that it is involved in the college football playoff, continuing that, assuming that continues for a while, what should happen with the Rose Bowl, AJ?
I think the Rose Bowl should this is going to pain both of you to hear this. The Rose Bowl should be the at-large bowl every year. It should be the game where the Rose Bowl gets to pick two teams that it thinks is going to put on a bonkers ass game. Just like the Utah, you can't tell me that Utah Ohio State game last year was not bananas. That was fun as heck
when that was over. Oh yeah.
The Penn State USC game.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That was fantastic, right? I don't want to see Iowa Stanford. I just don't. I don't want to see that game. I don't want that to be the thing where it's like, oh, Iowa fans go to the Rose Bowl, they're super excited, and Stanford runs them over. I don't want to see that game. I want them to pick like, oh, hey, we're gonna have Clemson and I don't know, Florida. Give me that in the Rose Bowl. Give me the most give me the give me the good, like you didn't make the playoff. Sorry about that. Your alternative prize, your consolation prize is you get to play in the Rose Bowl. You can't tell me
that's not a bad idea.
And you cannot tell, like that's the 5-6 game, the year that the playoff, that's in the year that the Rose Bowl isn't a playoff game, or always make the Rose Bowl the 5-6 game.
Yeah, because, I mean something like that, or
does anybody remember
first teams out of the playoff, something like that.
Georgia, Oklahoma, that was fun.
That was fun.
Like make that the 5-6 game, and then every year, like because the playoff game. So if we're talking about TV ratings, we're back to TV things. The national championship game is the highest rated game of the year every year. The playoff semifinals are 2 and 3. The Rose Bowl is 4. Ohio State, Michigan is 5 every single year. So make the Rose Bowl the 5-6 game. And then always have these like 2 top tier programs playing. And you can get kids to stick around because they get to play in the Rose Bowl. This is always the big beef of like, oh, hey, Pitt's playing Michigan State in the Fiesta Bowl or whatever. Kenny Pickett's not playing because he's like, this game doesn't matter. I don't care because I don't really give a damn about playing at University of Phoenix Stadium. I'll be playing there against the Cardinals in the fall. Like, he doesn't care about that sort of thing, or the Peach Bowl or wherever they played. But the Rose Bowl is its own unique thing. Yes. Even for me, a like not Big Ten traditionalist person, it is still a big deal. And having that as the 5-6 game, I think solves that problem.
Okay. Carla, what do you think when it's not directly involved with the college football playoff? If that continues, what should happen there?
First of all, that was the idea I always had for the Bahamas Bowl. The Bahamas Bowl should be the 5-6 game. Like, so if you don't get to go to the playoff, you get to go to the Bahamas. Anyhow, I like that idea of the Rose Bowl. I think that's I think that would be a good selling point, and I think it would make for an entertaining game. I think if the Pac-12, if the 6 teams of the Pac-12 go to the Big 12, so you end up with the Big 12, Pac-12 kind of mashup, right? If you wanted to stay traditional conference alignment, I would say it's Big 10, Big 12 bowl game. Because let's be real about this. You're going to probably end up with 2 of the better teams in the country. Maybe not 5-6, but you're going to end up with a pretty darn good matchup if you stick with those 2 conferences. And you kind of keep a little bit of the tradition, but allow for a little bit of a new generation to it. So I like the idea of the 5-6 game. But if I was, I would go Big 10, Big 12.
This is where this gets even more fun. Didn't even think about this. But let's say the Big 12 and Pac-12 did merge. You know what you've just created? A Power 4.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I just made automatic qualifiers. Win your conference, you go to the playoff.
Oh, if only.
Hey, guess what, Georgia? You don't get to go to the national title. You don't get to go to the playoff because you didn't win your conference.
Sorry. The thing I have written down about the Rose Bowl question is like, is there still a Pac-12? And I am probably on the young age for traditionalists who would never ever wanted to give up what happens in the Rose Bowl right now, or I'm the old side of people who are like, okay, let's let other people in on this deal. And AJ just points about the game are valid, and I like the idea. Depending on what the format for a playoff is the first 2 teams out is at 5 and 6. I think that is a good way to proceed from this point forward. Briefly, smartest / funniest / best thing you've seen on the internet about USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. Carla.
Beach volleyball in Minnesota, anybody?
Yes.
Because USC and UCLA both have beach volleyball teams.
Yes, they do.
So no, and the other thing I wanted to mention was, and this is, I don't know if this is funny or anything. but gosh, to me, like one of the things that popped into my head as I thought about all this was like, gosh, this makes Lincoln Riley to USC make a heck of a lot more sense. Because like one of the things that I was wondering about when Lincoln Riley went like bolted to USC, I'm like, okay, he's going to LA. That makes sense. Lincoln Riley's got a bit of an ego on him. He comes from the Stoops lineage, right?
Mhm.
And so why would Lincoln Riley give up a spot in the SEC to go to LA to get the occasional national game, but everything else on the Pac-12 network that nobody can find?
Oh, that one's easy.
Right?
He goes to USC because it's a way easier path to the playoff than it is in the SEC.
True.
He doesn't have to fight through Georgia and Alabama to get to the playoff versus being in USC. Let's assume that this didn't happen. USC has a straight shot to the playoff. They have to beat Oregon. That's it. And they only would play them once in the championship game. He gets to lock down Southern California recruiting and then walk to the Pac-12 South championship game, barring something dumb happening. And then he has to beat an Oregon team that seems to fall apart when it matters in those games. And now you have this like instant like potential trip of like, I'm undefeated and a conference champion. Playoffs say no. And then he can walk into the playoff versus saying, oh, hey, I'm the head coach at Oklahoma and the SEC West is a nightmare.
But yes, I understand all of that. But there's a part of me that says, how long ago did these conversations start with the Big Ten?
That's an excellent question.
And because Sports Illustrated has come out and said that as soon as Texas and Oklahoma went to the SEC, announced they were going to the SEC, the Big Ten created something that they called the expansion subcommittee. They did not specify in that article that I read in Sports Illustrated when that expansion subcommittee was formed. Was that expansion subcommittee formed early enough to help entice Lincoln Riley saying, hey, you come to USC, we're going to try to get in, like we're going to position ourselves to go to the Big Ten. Your school's going to get the big payday. You're going to get LA. You're going to get all the prestige and the glamour that goes along with, being the USC coach, but also being a part of a big major conference that's going to get seen on TV all the time. And you're going to be able to grow, like, just really interesting. I would love to know when those conversations started, how much of this to the, USC to the Big Ten was even an inkling in somebody's imagination.
I love me a good conspiracy theory. AJ, what was your favorite?
My personal favorite was Spencer Hall, Every Day Should Be Saturday, reminding all of us that the East Lansing weather machine is real and that UCLA and USC are going to have to play in East Lansing in November at some point. And it's
going to be awesome.
But like I thought about it and I was like, yeah, they're going to have to deal with bad weather. And I'm like, wait, they had to play Utah. They've had to play Oregon State. They've had to play the Pacific Northwest. It gets a little gnarly there.
The interesting is different though. It's different.
They had to play Colorado.
Sure. Madison, Wisconsin cold is different than Front Range in Colorado cold.
Now, the other thing here that I did just think about, is that they won't have a conference scheduler who hates them. Like, have you guys ever noticed that the USC will inevitably get scheduled for like a Friday night game against Oregon State? And then that's the game that we all go, that you look at your phone and you're like, oh, I wonder what happened tonight. USC did what? Every single time. They lost to Wazoo in Pullman.
Yes.
Pullman is cold. They've lost to Oregon State. Like all of these times where it's like USC's got this shining season and then they lose, right? I'm also interested in, I hope you two are ready for this.
Yes.
B1G After Dark. Let's go. Oh, welcome to my gang. We meet every Saturday night at 10:30 and you can watch your team play. Because guess what? You get to learn about the magic of Arizona sports law where you're not allowed to play a game before 9 p.m. local time. because it's still too hot. So Michigan State, they've already done this. Michigan State played Arizona State in September, and the game kicked off at like almost midnight, or like it kicked off at 11 p.m. Michigan time, because the game couldn't start before 9 p.m. because of Arizona law on sporting events, because it's still too hot. It was like 97 degrees at 9 p.m. at night. So you get to deal with the opposite of East Lansing cold and Madison cold is cold. Arizona hot is a different hot. They have to play at 9 p.m. hot.
I understand that one completely.
I cannot wait for Ohio State to get scheduled to play Arizona at Arizona, or like or UCLA or USC in the middle of like September.
We're just going to go ahead and jump to the last of the speed round questions. Carla,
yes.
Am I going to stay up if Ohio State's playing a game that starts at 11 o'clock on Saturday night?
Because you're a rabid Ohio State fan, you will figure out a way to do it. We'll all caffeinate together. We'll have a group Twitter chat or something.
AJ,
through that game.
AJ, the same question. Am I going to be able to manage this?
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Right.
Here's the thing: they're not going to put Ohio State on the 10:30 slot. Are you dumb?
No, at some point it's going to happen. At some point, I don't know. There's going to be a weird thing, and I'm going to be like, oh god.
Ohio State USC and Ohio State UCLA are eyeball games.
Yes,
they are going to be the 3:30 slot, which means it's a noon kick if it's a West Coast game.
Big nude.
Or
West Coast.
It's going to be the 7 p.m. ESPN game of the week, or the 8 p.m. Fox game of the week, whatever it ends up being at that time. Actually, this will all be post-media deal. It'll probably be Fox. So this will be the 8 p.m. kick on Fox. You will not have to stay up till 10:30 to see Ohio State play. Absolutely not. Now, if they add more Pac-12 current teams, Ohio State, Cal, sorry, you might have to stay up for that one. But
I've seen that one. Fox did that one as an East Coast evening night game a few years ago. Not prime time.
They
played at Cal. Yes,
they played at Cal. I remember this now.
Yeah.
By the way, Cal needs to get into the Big Ten in a very, very deep way, because their stadium is so wildly in debt it makes UCLA look like the most frugal people on earth. Cal is broke.
It is a cool old building for sure. Boys and girls, you can hear the Carla and Crappy Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, and a variety of other podcasting hosts. You can watch us on Facebook and on the show's YouTube page. If you like us, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you don't, mind your own damn business. Have to ad lib here. Be sure to come back around the end of August, or perhaps earlier if we feel the need. That's when we'll get started on the really fun stuff for this college football season. AJ, do you have a final thought?
We're not done. This circle will the money cannons will continue, and then it'll calm down for like 5 years, and then the money cannons will come back. So stay tuned, kids. It's gonna be fun.
Okay. Carla, you have a final thought?
We didn't do big winners and losers, but I will say that the big winner here by far, hands down, is both USC and UCLA. I mean, they did exactly what they needed to do to get themselves into a good conference, still stay nationally relevant, get that big payday. And that's a win for both of those programs substantially, and we get a really interesting conference now if that's the way that it stays. Again, stay tuned.
Well, I mean, it looks like certainly for at least for 1 year, they're going to be great additions. I referenced earlier in the show that I remember these games from 50 years ago, close to 50 years ago. Rose Bowls against both the Trojans and the Bruins, some of which Ohio State won, not as often as I would have liked. Several of which, the 75 Rose Bowl, the 76 Rose Bowl, the 1980 Rose Bowl, those were all losses, twice to USC and once to UCLA. That would have been likely national championships if Ohio State had been able to win those. So this is This goes beyond just kind of, schools you'd see in the Rose Bowl occasionally. I'm still, I still have a hard time believing this is like a real thing. Understand all the business stuff, obviously, but just as a fan, it's like, this is going to be awesome. And I cannot wait to see them on the field in Columbus sometime in the next couple of years. I hope. I was also very happy that I got to see you guys to talk about this. I appreciate you guys jumping in the middle of the off season. Although I suspect we were all ready to do this anyway.
Is there really ever an off season? Really?
Nah,
No.
not really. No, not at all. And of course we thank you guys for finding us in the summer. Although we're going to yell about you a lot when we get this show ready to go, and we will see you at the start of the season, as I said before, if not sooner. Cheers, everybody. Cheers. There we go. Thank you guys for watching. We will talk to you again soon.